Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LoCoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin Conlon, owner of Team LoCoFit. Each week, I am joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com. All right, and I'm joined today by Coach Karina.
Hey guys.
Hey guys. So cute. Your hair looks so cute. I just love it. Thank you. It's so like perfectly curly.
Did it for the camera today because I'm not going anywhere else.
Yeah, it feels. Past few months of like not like getting ready for certain things, but then like, you know what I mean? Like just like way less.
Now I'm getting ready for like the smallest things, like coming over to your house because I have nowhere else to go.
Literally Brew was here last week and we had some friends in town and she always like does my hair, so she like curled it and I was just like, oh, this is so nice. Like I don't know how to do this. But that is not what we're talking about today, not curly hair, which would be a great podcast as well. But
it would last 2 seconds.
Yeah, 2 seconds. I can't curl my hair. Okay, the end. It's fasted training. So we did a meal timing podcast
like a few weeks ago.
Yeah, a few weeks ago.
Last time we were on.
And we got a lot of other questions, and one of the main questions that kept coming back was fasted training and you know, kind of our thoughts on it, and you know, should you do it, how to do it, and all that, because we have a lot of experience personally but also with all of our clients here. So first and foremost, we're just going to say that training fasted is not going to be optimal physiologically
for performance in general.
Yeah, you're going to be likely not as hydrated. You won't have as many calories, depending on if you use caffeine beforehand. It might just take a little bit longer. You know, some people don't wake up as well first thing in the morning. Right? There's a lot of reasons to not do it from a air quotes optimal position, right? But understandably, a lot of people are going to have to do this just based on their life.
Right. Yeah, I have, you know, I trained fasted for a long time last year. I don't really do it anymore, but my significant other, who works 10-hour days, literally only has 5 a.m. in the mornings to train. That's who it's going to be most optimal for. Like if it fits in your schedule best to train fasted, I'd rather you do that than not be able to train at all week long. You know, I have clients who work in the medical field who also work like 10-12 hour shifts, and the only option they have is training at 4 a.m. Kudos to them, because that's discipline, and I have a really hard time with doing that. And then, you know, even parents who have a very unpredictable day with young children, it's best for them to get their workout in while their kids are still sleeping in the 100%. Morning. And yeah, that's definitely who this situation would be optimal for.
Yeah, I've coached a lot of people who have to do this, and again, like we said, it's not like the perfect situation, but you can totally make it better. And we'd much rather people train than not train. Now if it comes down to like, oh well, there's so many nuances here, but in general, let's say that you're in a position to where it's just a lot better for you to do this. How can you get the most out of your fasted training? So first and foremost, like I said, a lot of people are, you know, you're not going to be able to drink as much, so we're not going to be as hydrated. So you really need to make sure that when you wake up, you start drinking a decent amount of water. You could say a bolus of water.
My favorite word.
If you listen to the last one, you'll know.
I said bolus like 100 times.
It just literally fits so well, and I don't know the first time that I heard that, but ever since then, I just say it, and it works here. So you're gonna want to have a bolus of water. How much? It's gonna just depend on how much you drink every day. And I know, like for me, I'm somebody who drinks a decent amount of water, and I sweat a lot because, well, we live in Florida. And even when it's not hot, it's still hot. And right now it's hot, and it's
you go outside really for like 3 minutes and you're sweating. Like if you're that person, you need water.
Yeah, that's me 100%. So just wake up and just, you know, have it next to your bed. Drink some water. It's really easy when you wake up to not drink water. I mean, you might be a little bit thirsty, so I'll have a few sips here and there, but you need to make it an active priority to get this water in. I find that people say like, oh, I can't drink enough water. Just put a straw in your water. That literally changes everything. Like if I have a straw, I can drink pretty much anything in like a minute. Yeah. So get a huge thermos, huge cup, whatever you want to do, drink that. I mean, that's not really an issue for you, right? Like you find that it's easy, but once you get yourself in that habit, I think it's hard because you can wake up and be like, oh, I'm fine.
Yeah, and it's that just becoming a habit. It's becoming your morning routine, and I definitely think like the straw theory is real. Like I drink so much more water.
So much.
Maybe it's like a part of me that's super lazy and doesn't want to actively like pick up the cup and, you know, tilt everything. But when I could just like do minimal amount of work to get water in through a straw, that's super easy for me. But yeah, you know, just touching on this subject, water intake is super important, especially because thinking about it, you've just spent the last 8-10 hours, ideally, you know, not having anything in your system. You are dehydrated, and that's not just going to be optimal for training in the mornings.
Another thing, that's just not optimal ever, especially with training, but particularly in the morning, a lot of people are going to struggle with that. Another thing too is making sure you have enough electrolytes. So really easy way to get in electrolytes is our thermotabs. That was like not English. I was like, thermotabs. So we just order them online. You can get them at a store or just whatever. They're really, really cheap. I know there's a lot of companies that make stuff like Noon or like NUUN and stuff like that. Yeah. And they're flavored, but they're pretty expensive, and they don't have really even that much
sodium?
Brains?
Brains.
Stop me.
Oh gosh.
Here we go. Okay, you guys know this is just how I talk. Some days are just a lot harder than others, and this is one of those days. So the profile of how much salt is in it for how expensive it is, it just really isn't that much. So thermotabs are very, very cheap. I think for like a bottle of like 100, it's like $7.
Oh wow.
And each one has like 500 milligrams of sodium and potassium and all these things. So it's really, really great. I love them. And they, listen though, it says on the package like that they dissolve in your drink. It's really not that great of a, like it doesn't dissolve that well. So what I just do is me and Ryan just take them like pills. So just pop it like a pill, swallow it, easy. I do that typically because I don't train usually fasted. So I don't do it beforehand, but I usually do it afterwards because I've sweat a lot. Right. So it's just going to depend. I do it before training. I mean, I do it after training, and I do it after jujitsu. But it also just depends kind of on the day. If I have sweat a lot already from training and I am doing jujitsu later, I make sure I have some before too. Like it's just an easy way because, you know, a lot of people are salting their foods, but a lot of people don't realize that they don't really have enough sodium. Right. And there's so many issues from that, particularly like muscle contraction, headaches, feeling weak. And if you are sweating, like it's the summer months, a lot of people just... It's really done like a 180 with the weather, and if you're not on top of that, like it's not gonna be good. Yeah,
that's actually something I've experienced firsthand. I've just recently started CrossFit, and you know my gym does not have AC, so it's like an hour and a half of being so sweaty, and I couldn't put the two together. But then like 3 hours later, I would have like the worst headache, and then I'd be knocked out by 8 p.m. And then I would be like, oh my god, like. Is something wrong with my brain? But then, you know, putting together, like, I'm sweating more than I've ever sweat when I typically train, and I'm just not someone who has put in that habit of paying attention to sodium. So that's something that I've definitely had to get on top of, especially like if you're someone who trains CrossFit or you spend hours doing jujitsu and you're sweating, or just if you're just a Floridian in general.
If you just live in Florida or anywhere that's humid, you understand. But we both train a lot of times in our garage, and we both do other training that's very hot, very sweaty. So I keep those around. It's very easy. They're very cheap, super convenient. And I'm still salting my food, but it's just not the same. You know what I mean? Like it's just not going to be enough, because most people are like making their own food, and it has, you know, lower sodium, and they're like, oh, I salt on my meals, and I'm like, yeah, but it might not be enough. And I always find if people have salt, if you have salt pre-workout, you're definitely going to have a really great pump too. Yeah. If that's what your goal is as well. So there's a lot of really good benefits here. So especially if you're training fasted, make sure, you know, you're drinking your water, have, you know, a thermotab or two, and you'll feel so much better.
Yeah, and that really helps. I feel like when I was training fasted, especially when I was dieting, which I eventually had to stop for obvious reasons, was I would feel like very flat. And that reason you might feel flat when you're training, when you're fasted, is because water and sodium are low.
Yep. So both of those reasons. So get ahead of that. Make sure that you are really prioritizing that. If you are making fasted training your priority, you also need to make these two things your priority. And then something that we both love are liquid carbs. So which would technically not make it fasted, right? But in an optimal setting, even if you cannot eat a meal, having liquid carbs are going to be very, very useful for your training. And we're not talking about a ton. We're not saying, oh, you need to have 50 grams of liquid carbs, right? Most of our clients are women who have average food intakes, right? It's not somebody, most people are not having 400 grams of carbs a day.
Yeah.
But you can afford 10 to 15 grams. And I know that doesn't sound like it would do a lot, but that does a tremendous amount.
I can always feel the difference between like having no carbs and having like 10 to 15 grams of carbs a day. And when I do recommend it to a lot of my clients who haven't, they also mention like experiencing this difference in energy and just endurance in general.
Endurance in their training. Like, when people will say like, oh, I felt great in the first half, but then I really kind of fell off.
You just die out, yeah.
And that's where, again, hydration, electrolytes, and carbohydrates come into play. So, you can use a Gatorade powder. If you're gonna do that, definitely get the powder. It's way cheaper instead of buying like the bottles, which is totally fine if you want to do that too. But we have like the powder that Rye uses all the time because he has a ton of carbs. So I don't want to tell anybody his carb numbers because you guys will all start crying. But that's a really easy way. Obviously, we both love Intraformance from First Form. I'm a huge fan of that because it has 2 different carbs in it, so it's not just going to like spike your blood sugar.
And electrolytes.
And electrolytes as well. So it's kind of like a great combination product. And like I said, 10 to 15 grams is going to make a huge difference. Also, coconut water is amazing too because there's a ton of potassium in there, which is really hard for people to get. Most people don't realize that they're not getting enough potassium either. So there's a few different options there of what you want to get, but having 10 to 15 carbs, keep it simple. And we like the liquid carbs because there's no digestion required. So it's not like you're eating candy and that's going to have to go through the whole digestion process. This is just immediately kind of get in your bloodstream. So that's one of the biggest things that when I tell people, they immediately feel it. It's not like a pre-workout feeling where you're like, oh, I'm all crazy.
Right.
But it's just like a solid energy feeling.
Yeah, and I know for me, something I struggled with when, especially halfway through training, when I was training fasted, is I'd start to feel like hypoglycemic. And then
that helps too.
Training performance would fall off. And so as soon as I did ingest those carbs, I felt a lot better. Something I actually just thought about, which might be a little bit off topic, but not entirely.
I'm like, where is this going?
Sorry. It's okay. It's not going to be like last time. But I think that, last time we talked about hormones in the morning and how training fasted, so cortisol is highest when we wake up, and then training is another stressful response on the body. And so, especially for clients who are on that like chronically higher cortisol end, it would be most beneficial for them to have food in the morning because if you're already someone who has issues with super high cortisol, training is just a stressful variable in general. So being able to feed your body, which is going to likely take some of that stress off, is also going to be helpful in general with our cortisol response.
And carbs help with that as well. So carbs will help the cortisol response. So all in all, if you're going to train fasted, make sure that you have good amount of water, good amount of electrolytes, and get in some liquid carbs, 10 to 15 grams. If you have a lot of carbs and you want to do more, that's totally fine. But don't think that it needs to be like all of your day's worth of carbs there.
Obviously, you don't want to be like full and sick.
Yeah, that's not the point either. Now afterwards, what to do after. So immediately after, is typically what we both recommend is having a protein shake afterwards. Again, easy to digest. And typically if in the morning, you're gonna be finishing your training and then most likely you're gonna be getting ready for your day. So it's kind of perfect to just have this shake, shower, get ready, do whatever you want. And then later you can have your meal, within an hour and a half, whatever kind of works for you. And that also helps too with for people who struggle both ways with hunger or not hunger after their training. So I find that there's 2 responses. We both are in the camp of we're really hungry after we train. So having even 1 scoop of protein, 20 grams of protein will help. But it's also helpful for people who are oh, I'm so full I don't want to eat. This is also now you're getting in protein, right? So it's funny how it works for both ends. But it really does.
I feel like protein shakes are kind of I feel like, how do I say this? It's definitely beneficial for both scenarios, especially for me. Especially when I was dieting, if you're someone who's dieting, a training a protein shake right after training, whether it's fasted or not, is going to keep you from getting home and raiding the pantry. Because after training, I'm typically very hungry.
Dude, even when I'm not dieting, I'm like that. Like,
yeah, but in the morning, say now I'm not dieting.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time eating in the mornings. But understanding my goal is I need to put on muscle. Fasting for long periods of time is not going to be beneficial for me. So sometimes the easiest thing is if I can at least get in a protein shake, that's going to be, my best friend throughout my entire life.
Seriously, we love protein shakes. I know, there's some people who are very anti that, but I think it's one of the most convenient and not only convenient, but just like, I guess it is convenient, just perfect ways to just add that into your life. And if you're struggling to eat or you're struggling to hit your protein numbers, like,
protein is hard to hit because it's not as readily available as carbs and fats are.
Yes.
So that's where protein shakes are really helpful for hitting those targets.
And then, so that's afterwards, but then what would be something that you could do before bed? Pre-bed, if you know that, you're going to be training fasted on a regular basis, or
this is essentially going to be like your pre-workout meal.
Yeah, so you're going to want to eat, a decent meal before bed, not too much to then disrupt your sleep, like we talked about last time, but enough to where, you basically don't want to eat all your food earlier in the day and then it's dinner time and you just have, a really, really tiny portion of like whatever you have left over. So now and then you go to bed kind of hungry and then you wake up in the morning to train.
So a little meal plus 8 to 10 hours of fasting into training is not going to be helpful.
No.
Obviously eat enough so that like glycogen stores are nice and full by the time you wake up, and that you aren't starving going into training, and that you aren't like super flat like we mentioned. Obviously, like we said, water and sodium are going to help with that. But treating that last meal the day before as your pre-workout meal for the next morning. But yeah.
And then also one more thing about caffeine. So we didn't write that down, but that's a really obviously important one.
Yeah.
Hello. Really important thing to talk about because everybody asks about, okay, pre-workouts, or do you need, whether it's like an energy drink or coffee or whatever. So everybody's going to respond different to caffeine. If you have any questions about caffeine, me and Jill did a whole caffeine podcast, so go refer back to that one. We talk about all the ins and outs of caffeine. But it can be a very useful performance enhancer, particularly for training. Now, it's going to depend on the type of training you're doing. If you are doing bodybuilding training, that's a little bit different than if you're doing, say like the CrossFit workout that day has a lot of endurance in it, right?
Yeah.
Or if I'm going to jiu-jitsu, which I'm not going in the morning, but let's just say, right, like that's going to be a whole different thing of, you don't want to be totally stimmed out. So you want to have some stimulants, but not too much to kind of push you over any kind of edge. And everybody knows if you have too many stimulants, you just feel you have an inevitable crash. So you don't want to have that first thing in the morning.
No.
So it's going to depend on you and how much you can handle. But yes, use caffeine in the morning as needed, and just kind of use it as you like, whether it's a pre-workout or and people also forget this too. They'll look at a pre-workout, they're like, oh my God, there's so much in here. It's like, well, you can take like half a scoop.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? I do that all the time, especially now. Like, I mean, there are some days where I take a full scoop because it's just been a struggle of a day, or there's like a lot going on, or I haven't slept, or I've been traveling, like whatever, right? But normally if I'm going to take pre-workout, I will, at this point, not dieting. Well, I guess I'm started dieting, air quotes. But not in a proper low body fat situation.
Yeah.
It's really not the diet, it's the body fat actually. Yeah. But anyways, I'm going to take half a scoop, you know what I mean? And that's going to be totally fine for me. But if you're somebody who's really sensitive to caffeine, maybe taking you have to know how much to take.
Right, and understanding like your tolerance, and that's going to vary between size, how long you've been taking in caffeine. I'm someone who, when I was training at like 5:30, 6 a.m., I would do a whole scoop of Project One, because that is gasoline. Like I love it so much. But if I am training like later and I need pre-workout, I don't always use pre-workout, but if I really need it, I will do half a scoop. And obviously just being smart about like the timing, and being able to fall asleep that night and all of those things.
Caffeine is all about timing. And we are pro caffeine users.
There's plenty of research on all the benefits it has on performance that you can't refute. Just
make sure that you're doing it in an appropriate way for you, which again is going to be a little bit different for everyone. So all those questions we covered in that caffeine episode. It's so interesting, like how all these little nuances like seem like they don't matter, but they really do. You know what I mean? So like hierarchy of needs, if you are going to train in the morning without eating a meal, get in water, get in electrolytes, get in some liquid carbs. Prioritize your post-workout nutrition, prioritize your pre-bed nutrition, and then use caffeine kind of as needed and in an amount that is going to work for you. And I know some people actually like using caffeine after they train too, just as kind of like a pick-me-up, right? Because like you might be a little bit tired. Like I know for me too, like that kind of happens, like that little bit of a crash after training.
Right. Yeah. In the mornings, I'll have like my pre-workout, and then I'll be a little crazy and also have a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
But that's, I feel like a mental thing for me. Like I have to have coffee in the morning.
That's actually
smell.
That's actually one of the so I recently started training earlier actually, because when the whole pandemic was happening and the gyms were closed, we had several people training here almost every day.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to, it was like fall into a line. Okay, I'm going to train here. This person's going to train at this slot. It was like a gym slot.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, I'll do it earliest because I can always do that. You know what I mean? And then Jill will go, and then Ryan will go, and then our other friends will go. Like it just kind of worked like that.
Yeah.
And so I've actually gotten into that habit, and I don't mind it. Like today, jiu-jitsu was late and I was up late. I just couldn't really sleep. So I was like, I'm going to just train later today.
Yeah.
But other days I've been training earlier, doing active recovery, biking and stuff earlier. And it's funny because I'm like, it would be good to use a pre-workout for caffeine and also the other stuff that's in a pre-workout, which is helpful for training. But then I'm like, I love having coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
Like there's something about coffee in the morning that is so much more appealing than pre-workout in the morning. Like if I have like too much fake sweet, now if I'm dieting, game over, it doesn't matter. But like right now, I would much rather have coffee in the morning, train, and then just take a pre-workout later, even if I just need more caffeine, just because I like enjoy it. But then I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. But you know what I mean? Like it's just so funny how
it's just like a neurological thing for me. Like my morning is not complete without like coffee and the smell and the.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's literally, I just love coffee, and I can have coffee at any time of the day. But
I cannot do that. I'm a morning coffee person, but
it could be late and I'd be like, coffee? Oh, okay. But I don't do it because I know it's not good, but I could literally have it at any point in the day. It's pretty scary. I'm one of those people. But so if you guys have any other questions, I think we really just dove deep into our thoughts on fasted training. But I know there's always questions. So if you guys have any questions, please let us know. Reach out. You can email us at info@teamlocofit.com. That's probably the best way to just kind of categorize things, because messages sometimes like just get all crazy and
in the DMs.
Yes, in the DMs. And just as a kind of final thing, we are recording this
June 5th.
Actually, check the date. Yeah, June 5th. Friday, June 5th. And there is a lot going on in the world. There has been for months, right?
Yeah.
There's really since March, it's just been like event after event, and it's just been a really devastating time for really a lot of people. And we just wanted to say one thing, and it's just it's really been hard to articulate kind of what to say or how to say things, especially lately. But we do just want to say, like, what you can focus on is your own self. You can always show up as your best self, as cheesy and cliche as that sounds. It really is true. Taking personal responsibility for all of your actions is the only thing that you can ever do. You can't control what other people say. You can't control what other people do. You can say things if you see things that are wrong, but ultimately you're the person that you can control. And there's so much right now division with social media and the media, and everybody, the extreme ends on both sides are really loud, and that's confusing people, you know. But really everybody wants the same thing. Everybody, for the most part, agrees on the same stuff. It's just that the media has been so divisive lately, just really for every issue lately. So we just want to kind of say, in the midst of all of this, all of the devastation, all of the sadness, focus on yourself. Focus on how you treat people. Focus on what you can do to be a better person. And that's all that you can do. And do you want to share your favorite quote?
Yes, and that's how we change the world. Because our favorite quote, which we are pretty sure Gandhi said, we had to double check the internet. And then someone said that he didn't say it. But anyways, be the change you want to see in the world. And essentially kind of just reiterating what Laurin said is, obviously the world is not in a good place right now. And we all need to continue to push for a better world for everyone to live in. And that starts with the individual. That starts with making sure that, your actions line up with what's going to create a better world. Standing strong in your beliefs and treating people the way you want to be treated. and just making sure that, you know, you're doing your best to help others. And we start with ourselves. And so it's like when we were talking about this, it's like, how do I say this? And then the only thing I could think of was like Gandhi's super cheesy quote, which is not cheesy, it's very wise, but I'm sure all of you have heard it a trillion times in your lifetime, which is why I'm saying it's cheesy. But yeah, we have to be the change we want to see around the whole world. And you know, what I've been saying over the last week is just like, we need to protect each other and respect each other. And that's how we can all hopefully create a better world to live in.
Yeah, so we just wanted to add that, and that's it. Just kind of a...
We hope all of you guys are doing the best you can.
Yeah, that's it.
Be the best you can. And that's all we ever want for our clients, for our friends, for our family. It's just becoming our best self, like you already said.
So, all right, with that, we're going to sign off, and we will catch you guys next episode.